She was 13 when they dressed her in alpaca wool and began the long, silent climb towards the clouds. At 6,700 meters, the air thins so dramatically that a simple cough can burst capillaries in your eyes. She wouldn't be coming down. Not ever. Frozen solid beside her were two toddlers, their tiny hair meticulously braided with strands of coca and powdered gold, a final, poignant adornment. Modern hikers, stumbling upon this chilling tableau centuries later, found them still clutching miniature carved llamas, their faces eerily calm, cheeks plumped with ritual cloth. The preservation was so profound that one lung still held red, liquid blood, a stark, visceral link to a life abruptly ended. This wasn't a crime scene in our modern understanding. It was, in their world, a party invitation for the mountain gods. And parties like this, with their grim guest lists, happened thousands of times before Columbus ever saw the shimmering Caribbean horizon. Keep watching if you want to know why entire empires genuinely believed the world would literally stop spinning unless a child's heart stopped first. To us, when we picture pre-Columbian America, our minds often conjure images of majestic pyramids, rich chocolate, and intricate, colorful glyphs. But to the people who lived there, it was a ledger written in red, a cosmic balance sheet demanding constant, often terrifying, reconciliation. Every single sunrise demanded interest paid in beating hearts. They believed maize wouldn't sprout from the earth, rain wouldn't fall from the sky, and Venus wouldn't rise in its appointed cycle unless someone's life force was meticulously handed over. The core idea was strikingly simple, yet profoundly brutal. The gods, they believed, bled for humanity at the dawn of time, sacrificing parts of themselves to bring the world into being. So now, humanity must bleed for them, maintaining that sacred, terrifying reciprocity. The currency for this cosmic transaction was human bodies. The ATM was typically a towering temple, and the PIN code, usually a razor-sharp flint knife. Across the sprawling Maya lowlands, through the bustling valley of Mexico, and high up the rugged Andean Cordillera, people meticulously built this same chilling equation into their calendars, their prophecies, and their very existence. Catastrophe minus one death equals catastrophe tomorrow. So, they scheduled slaughter with the same meticulous precision we might schedule tax day. It was an essential, unavoidable civic and spiritual duty, a constant ritual of atonement to keep the world from unraveling. Picture Chichen Itza, around 900 AD. A relentless drought has gripped the land for 3 grueling years. The once vibrant cenote's waterline has dropped precariously, much like the community's credit score in a modern economy. The priests, their faces etched with desperation, conclude the rain god Chalk isn't being fed enough, his hunger growing with each parched day. Captives, often high-status prisoners of war, are rounded up, stripped of their dignity, and painted Mayan blue, a vivid, almost supernatural indigo pigment that, astonishingly, survives centuries of tropical decay. They're then marched up the steep, unforgiving steps of the temple. Four attendants, chosen for their strength and ritual purity, grip the victim's limbs like compass points, holding them taut over the sacrificial stone. A fifth man, usually a high priest, with a flint or obsidian blade, swiftly slices under the ribs, reaches in, and with a horrifying tug, extracts a heart still pumping like a fish flopping desperately on a deck. While the body tumbles lifelessly down the pyramid steps, a macabre spectacle for the masses, the organ is held aloft, steaming in the morning heat, offered directly to the heavens. If that sounds theatrical, it absolutely was. The entire town would watch from the plazas below, a mixture of awe and terror on their faces, while royalty peered from their intricately carved thrones, affirming their own power through this divine mediation. Sometimes, after the heart had been offered, priests would flay the skin from the victim, then dance, wearing the freshly removed skin like a grotesque ceremonial wetsuit, a chilling embodiment of the deity. Archaeologists still occasionally find tiny fingertips, remnants of these terrible rituals, stuck to the stairway stones, a silent testament to the horrors. And if the rain still stubbornly refused to fall, more drastic coupons were clipped, more precious offerings made, Children, considered pure and thus highly potent sacrifices, were weighed down with jade ornaments and hurled into the Sacred Cenote, the same natural well tourists now innocently throw coins into for selfies. Utterly unaware of its dark history, they were offerings to a thirsty god, swallowed by the earth itself. Fast forward 5 centuries to Tenochtitlan, a sprawling metropolis with a population of 200,000, a city grander and more populous than contemporary London or Madrid. The very cornerstone of this magnificent city is the Templo Mayor, a colossal dual pyramid dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and sun, and Tlaloc, the god of rain and fertility. In 1487, it gets an extreme home renovation reboot, a dedication party that beggars belief. This macabre celebration lasts 4 days and involves the sacrifice of approximately 80,000 hearts. Contemporary accounts, though perhaps exaggerated by Spanish chroniclers eager to demonize, claim lines of victims stretch 2 miles, each person climbing the steps like commuters onto a subway car that, chillingly, only goes 1 stop. The routine was clinical, almost industrial in its efficiency. A priest would flip a body onto the chakmul stone, its belly a waiting receptacle for the extracted heart. With a blade of volcanic glass, he'd crack the sternum, and in under 10 seconds, lift the still-pumping heart, a grisly trophy. A drummer kept a frantic tempo. If the beat sped up, so did the line, a conveyor belt of human sacrifice. Bernal Diaz del Castillo, a Spanish conquistador, famously wrote that the smoke from burning hearts drifted so thick across the valley that it smelled like a butcher shop on fire. The Aztecs called it feeding the sun, a vital cosmic act. Without those hearts, they believed, darkness would win, the stars would flee their celestial posts, and the world would end not in some distant, abstract millennium, but next Tuesday, a terrifying, imminent catastrophe. The stakes couldn't have been higher, the cost unimaginably steep. South, high in the breathtaking Andes, the Inca Empire preferred its offerings on ice, literally. Here, the state orchestrated capicocha ceremonies, dispatching children and sometimes young women who were considered pure, often chosen from provincial nobility or those of exceptional beauty. These chosen few would trek hundreds of miles, a journey often made easier by being fed coca leaves and mace beer to keep them compliant, sometimes even drugged with ayahuasca to induce a trance-like state. Upon reaching the chosen mountain summit, where temperatures plummeted to a brutal -20 Celsius, the victims would be seated cross-legged, facing the rising sun. Priests would then either gently strangle them or, more commonly, leave them to succumb to the biting cold, falling asleep into an eternal slumber. The mountain, a silent, majestic tomb, would then seal them like Tupperware, preserving their bodies in near-perfect condition for centuries. Modern scans of these ice mummies show lungs hemorrhaged by altitude edema, a stark indicator of their final moments, yet hair samples reveal they chewed coca minutes before death, a ritual calm administered like a priestly lollipop, easing their transition. One particular mummy, dubbed La Doncella or the Maiden, still wears a feathered headdress so exquisitely crafted it would make a Met Gala guest blush with envy. Tourists queue today to peer at her through a glass coffin, largely unaware that she wasn't just a child, but part of a sophisticated state insurance policy against devastating earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and crop failures, a profound sacrifice made to appease powerful mountain deities and ensure the well-being of the empire. Imagine, if you can, standing in Tenochtitlan's vast central plaza while 100 skull-shaped whistles shriek in unison. It's not just a sound, it's an assault. The Aztec death whistle, ingeniously crafted, produces a chilling screech that researchers describe as a horrifying hybrid between a cougar's guttural roar and a woman's blood-curdling scream. Neurological tests on volunteers, brave souls indeed, showed that the brain regions associated with fear light up like carnival rides when exposed to these sounds. This wasn't just noise. It was designed to create profound psychological terror and urgency. The sound carried for kilometers, turning rituals into a form of mass panic therapy, a shared visceral experience that bound the community in fear and awe. Rulers, ever shrewd, weaponized this terror. Armies would blow thousands of these whistles before battle, a cacophony designed to convince enemies that the dead themselves were howling, rising to meet them, shattering their morale before a single arrow was loosed. Inside the city, the same haunting noise bonded citizens through shared terror, an ancient, terrifying version of singing the national anthem at a fireworks show, except here, the fireworks were human thoraxes, and the anthem was a shriek of primal fear. Sacrifice, you see, was never only religion. It was also shrewd, often brutal, public policy. Emperors cemented shaky alliances by loaning out their most skilled priests for mega barbecues of captives, turning shared ritual violence into a political bonding experience. Provincial leaders who showed up to these ceremonies with their own quota of victims proved their loyalty and secured their place in the empire's favor. Those who did not, well, they risked becoming the menu themselves, their defiance interpreted as a challenge to divine and imperial authority. After successful wars, triumphant jaguar knights would parade their prisoners down the main streets, transforming foreign bodies into a kind of grim, civic confetti, celebrating victory and instilling fear. Even the bustling markets of the Aztec Empire, surprisingly, prized slaves by their sacrifice worthiness. A sturdy adult, deemed suitable for a major offering, might fetch about 30 cacao beans, while a smaller, less robust child might go for 10. The state, much like the IRS today, taxed towns and humans, not just goods or services. Failure to meet this chilling quota meant your own village might appear on next year's audit, with its citizens becoming the required tribute. And sometimes, perhaps most disturbingly, victims cooperated, even embraced their fate. Chroniclers record warriors boasting they would die painted, sung, and remembered, preferring the glory of a public, ritualistic death to an ignominious old age. The empire's sophisticated propaganda machine, its ancient PR, spun death as the ultimate social mobility. Get your heart torn out on the Templo Mayor, and you might just escort the sun across the sky forever, enshrined in eternal glory. Then, as all ledgers eventually do, this one balanced itself, but not in the way the priests or emperors predicted. Long before Cortes and his conquistadors truly asserted their dominance, smallpox, an unseen biological weapon, beat the Spanish to Mexico, ravaging indigenous populations. Civil wars, fueled by internal dissent and the strain of constant tribute, further thinned the valley's numbers. When Cortes finally arrived, the great killing machines of the Aztec Empire had already lost much of their terrifying momentum. The Spanish, driven by religious zeal and a thirst for gold, systematically smashed idols, melted down precious gold artifacts, and wrote chronicles that both exaggerated the numbers of victims and, crucially, demonized the indigenous rites, painting them as barbaric savagery. Temple steps, once perpetually sticky with fresh blood, gradually grew weeds, reclaiming their ancient stones. Mountain shrines, once revered and active, were buried by avalanches and the relentless march of time, fading from collective memory. Yet, the horror didn't vanish entirely. It merely moved into the footnotes of history, becoming that awkward paragraph teachers often skip because it complicates the neat, progressive narrative of advanced civilizations and their supposed moral superiority. It's a truth we've often preferred to forget, or at least conveniently gloss over. But the past, as we're increasingly reminded, is never safely buried. It simply waits for coastal erosion, for a new excavation, for a fresh pair of eyes to unearth its secrets. Archaeologists working on Peru's coast, for instance, recently uncovered mass graves of children, a chilling discovery that made headlines in 2019. Here, 269 skeletons, all bearing the telltale sign of cut sternums, were found, all dated to a single devastating flood year around 1450. DNA analysis proved these children came from far-flung regions, gathered by state order, a desperate, large-scale offering to appease angry deities during extreme weather. Ground-penetrating radar images later revealed the children had been marched in pairs toward the Pacific Ocean, their final journey, before their chests were opened, ribs splayed like wings in a ritualistic attempt to avert further catastrophe. Meanwhile, in Mexican gift shops today, tourists innocently buy silver hearts, charming trinkets to remember their vacation. They're largely unaware that these souvenirs replicate the sacred eulotli, the very hearts priests once hoisted towards the sun, a grim echo of a forgotten past, now commodified and stripped of its harrowing meaning. If this story rattled you, if it made your skin prickle just a little, imagine being the kid, shivering, climbing that pyramid, knowing your fate. History is full of uncomfortable mirrors we'd often prefer to crack rather than truly look into. Hit subscribe for more episodes that don't shy away from staring back. Drop a comment on which ritual shocked you most, and share this video with that friend who still thinks ancient life was basically just a folk concert with better costumes. We moderns, with our advanced societies and sophisticated moral frameworks, like to think we've outgrown such brutal human accounting. Yet, when we look closely at our own world, at mass graves, drone warfare, and the cold, algorithmic indifference that pervades so many systems, it suggests we've merely automated the bookkeeping, distancing ourselves from the direct act. The pre-Columbian world, in its terrifying honesty, at least looked its victims in the eye, explaining precisely why the cosmos, as they understood it, demanded their ultimate sacrifice. Forgetting that raw, visceral honesty doesn't make us more civilized. It simply makes us amnesic, blind to the enduring human temptations that drive such acts. The girl on the mountain, her young life frozen in time, the heart on the obsidian blade, pulsating its last. The child in the cold cloud forest, drifting into an eternal sleep. They are not mere relics of barbarism. They are chilling receipts of a universal human temptation to trade someone else's life, someone else's suffering, for our own peace of mind. Keep the receipt and remember its cost.